European LCS where Misfits Gaming and Splyce are ready for a Game 3 in this thriller of a series on our special Sunday edition of cross-group play. Stress, Misfits have picked blue side for game number 3.
Overly dramatic, and I think you can dramatize this blue side pick. Kalista rises to my mind as what the first pick priority is likely to be. We haven't seen the bans yet, might be banned away, but that's what they picked earlier on in game 1. It's what they picked in game 2 in their first rotation. I mean, they kind of have showed us they like that pick. And
Misfits had a phase 2 Tristana ban.
Yep.
Let's see if Tristana makes it all the way to phase 2.
No, I don't think so.
Kobbe had such a good performance. I also need to see more from Sencux. His Syndra sucked. Did not get a big lead. Had very little impact. Now, admittedly, he was jumped on, he was killed a lot, so all credit to Misfits for shutting him down. But you cannot afford to have one of your primary damage dealers deal so little damage.
Yeah, and I think that Syndra, although it typically has a lane matchup against the Vladimir, when you get later on in the game, we were talking about how Splyce need to get these catches, and they just didn't get the fights working for them. So we're into draft number 3 of this best of 3. The best of 3 to separate the groups. Remember, 12 and 12 series wins for each group. Group A and Group B.
And not only is it 12 series apiece, 31 game wins for Group A and 30 game wins for Group B. So let's see whether or not this ends up being even. If Splyce win this and do the reverse sweep, it'd be fantastic. And Tristana, to nobody's surprise, is banned in phase 1.
But the Maokai is also banned away. That means Elise, Cho'Gath is now available for first pick, but it means Misfits would have to forego that Kalista. And we know Kobbe plays it. We know that Splyce have played around that Kalista before, so while it might be a risk giving that show over, you've still got the Sejuani, the Braum, if they wanted to take it for Splyce, but it's not the Kalista, it's not the Sejuani, it's not the Braum, it's the Kog'Maw coming out here alongside Orianna. Very different priority here, but Kog'Maw can live up to Kalista a little in the laning phase, then scale incredibly well, especially versus tanks as an AD carry, but that's a risk.
Well, look at it this way, Stress. If the first 2 games tempo are anything to go by, Splyce will get to at least 23 minutes before the game is instantly over. And that might be enough time for Kobbe to get himself a few items. Hans Summer's going to lock in the Kalista once again. Definitely his flavor of the patch for now. And no priority on that Braum yet. However, that's what Splyce have run multiple times in the past.
Now, if they don't go mid lane for PowerOfEvil, the Braum could come out here, but I think we know the mid lane pool will get pinched if they leave it till after phase 1. That's why the Taliyah comes out. PowerOfEvil, of course, has a whole range of champions in his champion pool, but this is only his 2nd game, this split of Taliyah being played.
He went 3-1-8 in a victory the last time he played that champion. We've talked a lot about that Braum. It has continued to be a high priority on the side of Splyce, and it is locked in here in phase 1.
And now the Taliyah can actually do quite well against these static carries in fights like a Kog'Maw who just wants to stand still, because you basically just seismic shove him into your own team, and if Kobbe isn't paying attention, he's going to end up getting killed very quickly. And as we move to ban phase 2, it's become more about these picks we've seen a lot in this series. The Jarvan has worked well for Alphari. That is not available here in game 3.
What happens next? What else gets banned? Because Thresh and Rakan have been 2 staples. Ignar's Rakan was hugely impactful. It kept finding targets, priority targets, over and over. And Splyce will say Rakan is more likely the champion you're allowed to play, because they've banned away the Thresh. I guess Kalista Thresh, nobody really wants to give that combo over.
No, you don't want to give that over at all. Now, if this isn't a Sejuani ban coming through here from Misfits, then it'll likely be picked up by Splyce. If it is a Sejuani ban, they'll probably go to Gragas.
We'll finally get the Gragas.
Yeah, that everybody talked about.
So much about. I feel like the interviews for that video may have been done pre-714.
Yeah.
I have no proof to back that up, but it feels like the case. And in actual fact, they're banning Gragas instead of Sejuani.
Yeah, so they fear the Gragas a little bit more. Remember Maxlore saying the Trashy's a one trick. They know that's where he'll go. if it's available, whereas the Sejuani has been a struggling point to be active on the map. And when you look at it, scaling already from the AD carry, scaling on the mid lane, it means Splyce need a top laner that is active earlier in the game, otherwise they might fall into the same trap.
Well, let's see what Wunder decides to play. Has the option to counter pick now. Gnar is locked in for Alphari because his Jarvan has been banned away. Played Jarvan 4 times this week already.
So we could play the Rumble if we want to see him go for that AP damage, a little bit of teamfight presence earlier in the game was what we're talking about. Irelia would be a lane matchup that we have seen picked commonly into the Gnar. And we've been talking about this for 2 draft phases, Trevor. It is now the Alistar coming out with that Kalista.
Do you prefer this Misfits gaming comp when we look at the mid game? It feels like Kalista, Gnar, Taliyah, Alistar just switch online earlier than maybe the entirety of Splyce thus far.
And a little earlier, I'm a little worried still without a primary engage tool like an Ash Arrow. Maybe if you can get the Weaver's Wall to come through to get that Cho'Gath into the fight. That's the only concern for me. Maybe Hansama throwing Ignar in if you can get that distance closed. But for Splyce, it's another champion that will take a little time to come online in this game. It's a bit of a risky setup here out of Splyce. Looking for a little later in the game.
I mean, scaling again, split push in the side of the Camille. Admittedly, though, it is into that split pusher of Alphari's Gnar. But the value of a Gnar in team fights, in my opinion, greater than that of a Camille. And they do slightly different things, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's the risk reward, right? A Gnar, if you get a 5-man Gnar ultimate off, basically wins a team fight. Whereas that ultimatum is always going to have the same impact. You can always lock down that one person. So the difference is quite distinct, but I think Misfits once again have decent team fighting. It's not quite as linear as before, whereas Splyce have good team fighting themselves. With that split push component you're talking about, the Camille on the side lane may open up enough room and buy time for Kobbe's Kog'Maw and Sencux Orianna to actually get into this game.
Well, the 2 previous games, Splyce have actually had a very good early game. They've got some early advantages. I don't want to take everything away from Kobbe and Mikyx losing first blood at level 2 because they instantly came back and destroyed Hansama and Ignar with that Tristana Braum combination. Let's see what they can do this time around. It is a Kog'Maw Braum. A lot of additional damage to back it up, and it is the last game of Group A versus Group B here in the European LCS. Stress mentioned it a moment ago. 12 series wins apiece, 31 games for Group A, 30 games for Group B. That's parity if ever I've seen it.
Wait, but what happens if Group B win all the series by Splyce winning? That means they'd even up the game wins. Then they'd be even. You can't be even and win.
Well, apparently you can.
That's why we got rid of best of 2, right?
That's what we got. That's it. That's exactly how it works. No more ties here in EU. Only the one that you're wearing right now.
I was going to say, it would take quite a tie to match with that dashing shirt.
Oh, we cut away.
Was it time?
For the compliment. It is always time. Oh, Ignar's practicing his cowbell mechanics. I'm trying to look at his facial expression on stage to see if it is as trolly as the champion he's running.
Now, Kobbe, on the other hand, went not for the troll route, didn't play Pugmore. Still trying to make it Christmas time in July.
I have noticed that all of the Splyce skins were Christmas possible. They actually did that. The Braum previously as well. It was the Night Elf, the Earnest Elf Tristana as well. There's a little bit of synergy in there. So I don't know if they're just, you know, thinking about Christmas already.
Well, they've gifted over a couple of fights to Misfits in game 1 and 2, so
they gifted a Nexus in game 1. And unlike game 1, we have an Infernal Drake right out the gates. Yeah. So that'll be a little bit more contest-worthy. The Cloud Drakes just meant we didn't have those exchanges, and Misfits going for some early trades here and trying to disrupt
Speaking of contesting, it's trying to contest these Raptors actually forces the reset. This will mean Trashy, it'll take a little longer for him to actually take that camp, and now PowerOfEvil makes it back into the lane. Now we have to look at the effect that has on the top lane and mid lane, because Trashy is going to be slower off the mark. You can see Cho'Gath is already done with the red buff onto his Raptor camp. And we have to track whether Maxlore can get into a lane quicker than Trashy.
All right, and what sort of impact that'll have. Of course, Trashy I have been impressed with Trashy's early game. Not a jungler that I've traditionally associated with early game laning phase impact. Always thought he was stronger in the mid to late game, especially around team fights. You can see what he can do against Cho'Gath. This Cho'Gath as well, first time it's been played this series. It's been banned out in both previous games. Both times by the red side, actually. And that might, I don't know, might help or hurt Splyce as they let it go through.
Yeah, it's absolutely first pickable. We've seen the strength and the weakness of Cho'Gath in action. Of course, strength in every game is going to be this early game clear. That's why Maxlore is able to get around the jungle faster. The change to his E and just the sustain that comes from the Hunter's Talisman plus his passive just means that Maxlore basically doesn't get hurt through the jungle at all.
A little bit of a bait and switch there from Ignar. He was waddling forward, implying some threat onto Kobbe, but instead turned the attention to Mikyx, got a good amount of damage down. At the same time, Alphari goes in with the wallop crunch boulder toss combo, and gets a good trade onto Wunder. So a lot of early trading across the lanes, but no huge advantage yet.
This is an early roam coming out from Misfits towards the top lane. They want to try and get Alphari ahead. Look, PowerOfEvil has even come. Maxlore was spotted on a ward. They haven't spotted PoE yet. He's stuck all the way around the back of the lane to cut Wunder off before he can get away.
All right, the hook shot comes out, flash as well. Wunder decides to sidestep the seismic shove, and Wunder's able to escape. It ends up costing a ghost and flash from Alphari and PowerOfEvil.
Yeah, flash for flash on the top lane is a lot of things missed from PowerOfEvil there as he tried to get in through the queue backwards, try to get the seismic shove to predict where Wunder was going to go. It's a lot of investment out by Misfits to try and get this play on the top side, but I do like what they're attempting here. Trying to get the ball rolling, get Alphari ahead. PowerOfEvil, you know he's going to have push power in the middle lane against his Orianna anyway, so utilize some of the time outside of the laning phase, use the passive that allows him to wall surf his way up quickly towards the top lane, but no real effect until Maxlore goes back to that lane. If that play happens again while the flash isn't there from Wunder, then you can call it a big success.
Big success indeed. No flash available. Maxlore needs to repeat the gank. Instead, he's going to go down bottom. Mikyx gets head-butted away. Stand behind me, not available. Gets silenced as well. Easy first blood for Misfits.
And this is one of the strengths of Cho'Gath. If you have crowd control in the lane, it is easy to get him in there. The silence comes through. No way for Mikyx to get out. So he didn't even use his summoners. For a while, he couldn't, but he wasn't going to after the silence wore off anyway. Early first kill in the game for Hansama. And we've seen what Hansama can do when he's put ahead in the lane, but last game, he died 4 times very quickly.
After getting first blood. That was how it worked, right? they got it the first time. But now all of a sudden, by the way, it's Maxlore. He's on the Cho'Gath, he gets a flash up top, comes down bottom, and just great setup from Ignar.
From here, Maxlore's in range for the Rupture, in range for the Silence, and easy play on the bottom side. But look at this, Turnabout's fair play up on the top side as Trashy and Sencux are here. This is the reverse of what just happened. No flash for Alphari.
Alphari's about
Nearly
to get Gnar out, though. A lot of damage comes out. He hops over the wall, and Wunder very easily secures that.
Alphari throws his hands up. He knows he was one boomerang or auto attack away at the end of that from being Mega Gnar, but they caught him just in enough time. And we talked about how the play on top side, if it's Maxlore that repeats, would be a success. But it's Trashy using Misfits' aggressive play against them to capitalize and put Wunder ahead in the top lane.
And the timing was just so massive. Wunder gets a CS advantage, denies what's nearly
Kobbe.
2 waves. Kobbe's got flash and heal available to him, flashes away from the Rupture, but that's a successful gank. Ignar trades his flash for Kobbe's flash. And the early moves here from both junglers are paying off. They've both been successful in their respective ganks.
And this is where a lot of people look at a tank meta and say, okay, tank junglers can't do too much, but when you've got lanes that can facilitate this crowd control that comes from the jungle, that's where you can have the impact. Look, Wunder from that first blood now has a sheen that's going to increase his burst potential when he comes down from that hook shot. That's what he's been maxing, so you get a big spike of damage down onto the Gnar. If they get that with Trashy in the lane again, likely to be another kill because Alphari's flash is still way away.
Yeah, and look at that. Different elemental Drake, much earlier priority. The fact that Kobbe and Mikyx were forced away from the lane means that it's easily secured by Misfits. Trashy, no prism yet. good shockwave, catches out PowerOfEvil. He's got no flash available to him. Permafrost comes down and Sencux and Trashy combo for an easy kill.
Once again, the effect of the flashes being used earlier shown. Maxlore wasn't quite in range, and despite Misfits going all aggressive towards that Infernal Drake, Splyce pick up the kill, but now they want to go in bottom lane again. All
right, the Pulverize comes down into Mikyx. Kobbe steps forward. Hans Summer's got an army of minions in front of him, so Kobbe and Mikyx do not want this fight. Hans Summer gets 1, 2, 3, 4 Ren stacks lined up into Kobbe and pops the E. Ignar's got an Ignite available, fancies the tower dive. Kobbe's going low.
Trashy's on the way.
Stun. That's another for Hans Summer. Tower aggro's on the cannon minion. Hans Summer runs for his life. Glacial Prison comes down. There's Ignar, uses the Fate's Call to buy some time. Hans Summer stayed alive. He's turned this around. There's not enough damage. Hans Summer and Ignar win the 2v3.
Yeah, they managed to get the kill early on, deny the reinforcements from Trashy coming through, having a big impact in that. Yes, the ultimate landed, but Ignar waited on the Fate's Call to just defer any more push from Trashy and Mikyx. And from there's no damage coming through from a Sejuani and a Braum, despite the fact that Hans Summer's like 200 health. He will just hop away and has his heal available. So easy play in the 2 versus 3. Nice recognition here, though. Look, the vision control of Misfits actually makes Splyce question whether Cho'Gath is here again. And that's why Splyce initially back off. When Cho never shows up, they step forward again. And that's where Kobbe starts taking more damage. Enough that Ignar knows he can go aggressive under the tower. He's not level 6, doesn't even need his ultimate to make a play like this. It's headbutt into Ignite, into Pulverize as Hans Summer gets the kill. And here, it's a nice ult by Trashy to try and get Hans Summer down, but Ignar, great defensive play, denies any further engage, and there's no more damage left.
You have to wonder, where was this Alistar in previous games? Just didn't show up. I mean, this is a completely different AD carry laning phase from what we saw like a game ago, Stress. Here's some of the stats at the end of game number 2, 100% kill participation for Kobbe on that Tristana. But him and Mikyx, they were dumpstering with Tristana in lane, and now they're forced to lane swap.
Super dominant. Tristana, Braum just jumping forward all of the time. We talked about how Kobbe and Mikyx have this aggressive playstyle. This Alistar is very good at facilitating what the rest of Misfits have, and that's one of the drawbacks of a Braum. Is Braum against Alistar can't actually stop that engage until he's level 6. We saw Maxlore use full advantage of that to come down on the first blood. Then they use it in lane once again as Ignar is able to go aggressive. And that gives the tower first blood over to Misfits because Splyce had to swap out of the lane.
Yeah, that means Splyce have got a numbers advantage in the top lane. Alphari and Ignar going to get some support from Maxlore and PowerOfEvil. The Weaver's Wall is available if PoE needs to use it. Trashy going to take this blast cone if he can get the auto, and he does.
Tries to deny the blast cone as Ignar knocks him up. But look, now the focus turns to Rift Herald. Splyce looking for this. We've seen this in a couple of games from them, where they just concede on the bottom half of the map and pick up the Rift Herald in response.
All right, can Splyce use it to take out a tower? That's going to be the question. Wunder's farmed himself a nearly 20 CS advantage, and Hans Summer's farmed himself a nearly 30 CS advantage.
But we need to translate that into actual gold lead. If observers can toggle from items to gold, it is 1,800 gold in favor of Hans Summer currently. That is an astonishing lead. That's more than the lead Misfits even have in this game.
Nearly the entirety of it. It's just fantastic. But when you've got a 2-0 Kalista that's plus 25 CS and got solo tower first blood, well, that's how you have a pretty fed Hans Summer.
Our biggest narrative coming into this week was Misfits. Do they only have one carry? Is it only PowerOfEvil? Is he the only guy that'll win a game for Misfits? And what a week to ask that question, because Hans Summer has in multiple games, with this Kalista specifically, shown that when given a lead, he can control a game quite effectively. It's not been perfect. Last game, I think, is an example of how he hasn't had the best games at all time, but I think this is the growth we wanted to see from Hans Summer.
And the growth we wanted to see from Misfits as a team. Admittedly, we've seen growth from both squads. You know, the Splyce early game, we weren't expecting a huge amount from them. And games 1 and 2 this series, they definitely played clean, albeit slow at times. This time around, though, now they've got to once again play from behind. Now, this is a position Splyce have been in all series long. They've consistently fallen behind. And Misfits, they've matched the lane swap, sent their duo lane top. And with no tower on the bottom lane, Wunder, despite the lead he's accrued, He's now going to be joining up with Trashy and Sencux in the mid lane. Remember, Hextech Ultimatum, Glacial Prison, Shockwave, more than enough to take down, well, anybody at this stage of the game.
And what's different between the first game and this game for Wunder is his team can play a little more defensively. This Maokai isn't quite, or there's no Maokai in this game, so it's not quite as effective as we saw Maxlore be of just casting the ultimate and rooting 4 people down. But you can see just Misfits committing to all of this early game sustain, just making sure they can just take the lane matchups against Splyce for now.
Yeah, drag that one out. I actually don't think I've ever seen 5 refillable potions before. If you look at the inventory in the bottom of the screen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of them. I will carry on with that in a moment or two. Hextech Ultimatum comes down. Alphari is locked inside. Precision Protocol comes down. Phage and Sheen doing wonders for Wunder. Very good flash comes out. Now Trashy's all of a sudden looking for Maxlore. Feral Scream into the Rupture sidestep. Very good seismic shove. A lot of damage on a Trashy. He's forced to run for his life. Wunder gets a passive shield onto PowerOfEvil and Sencux. Shockwave still available to him. If a PowerOfEvil steps forward, that's another kill, but Splyce get 2 and get out.
All from a 1v1 started by Wunder, knowing he had the damage to trade onto Alphari. Didn't even have Trinity Force, but it was fine because he could get onto the Mini-Gnar, put the damage down from the burst, and then in came Trashy and Sencux in order to supplement the rest of the fight. Look, Alphari pushed up in lane. This is what Alphari wasn't doing in game 1. He wasn't playing aggressively, and Wunder on this Camille easily able to control in the long lane, and Maxlore didn't have the time to get here. Nice flash out after the hook shot. Misfits at this point think they can maybe take the fight here. They got Cho'Gath. They surely think they have the damage, but the problem is Trashy and Sencux are here. They get a great stun on PowerOfEvil as Wunder is able to get another hook shot and easily clean up the end of the fight.
Yeah, Splyce 2 for 0. They even out the gold. They take the kill lead 4-2 as we approach 15 minutes into the game. And a Mountain Drake has spawned, but with no tower in the bottom lane for Splyce to fall back to. Going to be a little more difficult to hold on to that area of the map. Trashy, I believe, was about to run out of time on that Rift Herald. Feels about right, as they've summoned it down middle and just instantly going to get gobbled up here.
Now,
Misfit squads.
Okay, so it doesn't count as one of the... Oh, okay, they didn't even feast it. I was going to say, it doesn't count as an epic monster, but just giving Cho'Gath another feast stack at that point, but Rend was the thing that took it.
Managed to kill that one out, and Splyce, as we mentioned, no tower, no real ability to set up for the dragon, so that's why Misfits are their first, and Splyce are still looking for their first tower here.
And that's why they didn't use the feast, is because they wanted it available to take the dragon, even though it does have that reduced cooldown when you use it on a minion, as Maxlore will have it available to take this. Remember, you infinitely stack off dragons, so that's why it's better to give it to the feast rather than the Rend.
And that just allows Maxlore's Cho'Gath to get beefier. Already at nearly 2,000 hit points. Maxing that E, then W. Increase the length on that Feral Scream. I hate silence as an ability.
It's so awful to play against.
It's so frustrating to play against. You just feel like your champion is not working, because, well, he's not.
He's not, yeah, that's... I'm glad it's working as intended
there
at that point then.
Well,
silence.
Doesn't make it any less annoying, straight.
No, neither is a basically lane-wide AoE % max health slow on his E when you get enough stacks. That's kind of frustrating to play against too, and it's one of the reasons why Maxlore is going to have a lot of presence in the later fights. Pair that with the infinite scaling from Feast, that ridiculous amount of % damage.
Well, you talk about that as Maxlore continues to scale. How else do the rest of Misfits win? What are the win conditions with this team composition? You know that Gnar can split push, but how else?
It's a lot focused on the team fights because they haven't got the likes of a Vladimir or an Orianna to win the late game team fights past the point of Splyce being able to contend. This Kog'Maw and Orianna will come online and Misfits won't have that opportunity. So between now and roughly 30 minutes, we're going to have to see Misfits win back-to-back fights, and they haven't really set themselves up to do that. They haven't put many opportunities in the face of Splyce in order to catch them out. And I actually think that Splyce are going to be happy with this game of grinding down and trading objectives because it's powering up their late game carries just well enough.
Yeah, you've got Camille, Sejuani, Orianna, all the scaling in the world, and Splyce in the lead. I mean, I made a joke during Picks and Bans and said that Splyce will be given at least 23 minutes to scale up. Mickey interrupts the Diglett dig. The PowerOfEvil's trying to throw down. Glacial Prison comes out. He's instantly killed. Don't have any clue what PoE thought he was going to do with no flash there.
And no wall, like he just used it. He chose to cast the wall, didn't actually ride it through. Huh, that's a very weird death to give away from PowerOfEvil, because Misfits weren't prepared for that fight. Nobody else was really in range. There was no team fighting tools available, and you were going to fight against Splyce, who had all of their ultimates. Very strange.
And all kudos to Trashy again for finding the ultimate. Now, admittedly, it's a pretty wide skill shot, that frozen bowler on the Glacial Prison, but managed to, once again, lock down PowerOfEvil, pick up a 5th kill of the game. I mean, Splyce have quietly snuck a 2,000 gold lead and a tower lead.
And consider that that was from their AD carry being down 1,800 gold earlier. Now it's 1,500, still a significant lead, but the leads they've got elsewhere, through the middle lane, through some of their objectives, the top lane, is actually supplementing the disparity between Kobbe and Hansama very well. And we need to see Misfits put more through Hansama, get Hansama some more kills. Okay, I guess we're going to see the interrupt.
I'm trying to see what happens here. So Mikyx cancels the wall.
Oh, it's the Unbreakable, yeah, so it cancels it. And then PowerOfEvil's like, okay, we were going to go on this fight, so I'm just going to run in again. And Trashy sees him coming. Okay, so PowerOfEvil was still committing to the play, and not everybody else was.
So not the same speed. Nobody else can surf on walls like you can, dude. It can take a lot longer to engage. And Trashy cleared some good distance with that Arctic Assault into the prison. By the way, Sencux, definitely not sucking on Orianna.
No.
2-0-2, I felt maybe we didn't really highlight his Syndra game as much as we could have in the last game. And this time round, he's silencing any critics. It's a very strong Orianna in the laning phase. Let's see what happens here. Glacial Prison this time misses, because of course I was
now they're trapped in.
A little while ago, the Weaver's Wall's locked down. No teleports used yet, guys. Glacial Fissure comes down. Finally, Alphari starts to channel the TP. Wunder can do the same. Will complete it in the middle of the rift. Hextech ultimatum's available, and the fight breaks out. Wunder is on a killing spree. He takes down Alphari. Hook shots over the wall for 2. The shockwave misses. Sencux, that was terrible. Doesn't matter, though, because Wunder and Kobbe are running amok. And Splyce get 4.
We talked about Misfits needing to fight, but unfortunately, the fights they've picked are just very Splyce favored. Wunder was able to hold on to his TP for long enough for the fact that Alphari, despite being Mega Gnar, TP's in, gets a multi-person Gnar, but it isn't enough. Splyce missed a whole bunch in that fight and still were able to take it convincingly. We'll see exactly what they did miss here, because you mentioned Sencux's Shockwave
yeah,
to begin this out. So Ignar's face checking into Mikyx, and Splyce kind of know. So Trashy, the flash out from the bowler, and then they just buy enough time. Look, Wunder hasn't TP'd yet, neither has Alphari. And Misfits move back in the fight, they come forward, and Splyce does reset. Once again, Kobbe is going to have massive team fight damage here, and nobody is focusing him out. Stun down onto Alphari, and the rest of the fight is just a case of walking through this. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, Sencux just lost track of the ball.
Yep, snap back.
That was a little bit too mean in the team fight. It didn't need to hit. It just would have made it even more powerful. Because Sencux has had a fantastic Orianna game. 2-0-6. Splyce are, what, 5,000 gold up at 21 minutes. And as long as they don't lose a team fight in Baron, they are now in control of the game and the series.
And what was a great draft in game 1 and 2 even from Misfits, and disciplined play, not giving up a lot of the advantages in the lanes, in the side lanes especially. Now Misfits have gone a little bit ill-disciplined. They're gonna just all in on Baron. Okay, that is risky. They know, of course, they have Feast sometime. Actually, it's not even available.
All right, no Feast.
They got Rend, but now you want to take a fight against Splyce. They know Wunder's no teleport.
Kobbe and Mikyx are off on the sidelines. Kobbe's been kicked out. That's a good Gnar from Alphari, and Sencux is the target. Where's the shockwave? Sencux stays alive. As it stands, PowerOfEvil's down. Maxlore follows after. Sencux is not going to be able to save Trashy's life. A very good headbutt from Ignar buys some time, but the distance from Wunder is just too great. 4 members of Misfits die. They are the ones that make the risky Baron call. And it ends up coming back to hurt them. Kobbe gets his first kill.
Riggedy wristy at that point was what you were probably going after.
Trying to.
Splyce can just take these fights so simply. The big criticism of Misfits that the Analyst talked about at the beginning of the day was their tendency to just make plays, take the wrong fights, go for Baron, and guess what this was? Misfits trying to all in on the Baron, thinking Wunder was further away than he actually was, not respecting the damage that Splyce have at this point. This Kog'Maw still has good damage in team fights, and Misfits are on different pages. And Splyce easily take another fight. This game is going quickly out of the grasp of Misfits. It hasn't been in their control for at least 10 minutes.
I'm at an absolute loss for words this series. We've seen some of the strangest decisions and not decisions, some of the strangest turns in gameplay, right? A completely even game at 20 minutes. In game 1, gets Baron and then magically ends 5 minutes later. Game 2, we have that crazy backdoor finish. And now game 3, Splyce, they somehow just smash Misfits at every opportunity once we leave the laning phase.
And it's because the composition for Misfits is not as forgiving. With the Maokai, with the Orianna, there were so many opportunities to just take bad fights because you're great at fighting. So if you're fighting, you're probably winning. Right. This time around, it's more complex. They need early game advantages. They need to be able to keep Hans Sama alive, get PowerOfEvil's damage down, and they're up against the scaling composition, which is good at fighting, that does have forgiving measures in it. And unfortunately, Misfits have misplayed enough fights that Splyce are in total control.
Yeah, they really, really are. Despite Kobbe falling so far behind early, the rest of the team is more than made up for it. Wunder and Sencux just enabled by Trashy. Keeps that 5k gold lead. I've not talked about items too much. Hurricane, Blade of the Rune King for Ansama. Rage Blade and Blade of the Rune King just completed for Kobbe, so fully online. And the Frozen Mallets now for Alphari. So nothing really surprising item-wise. But Splyce at 25 minutes, they've got 2 item spikes pretty much across the board for their main carries. And Misfits now need to find Splyce out of position or burst them down with the CC.
Yeah, the Rage Blade's the important one. For a tank buster as well, like a Kog'Maw that already gets good damage. You hit W, you get the attack speed, you get the on-hit augment from Rage Blade as well, and Kobbe will just shred all the way through Maxlore and Alphari if he is safe. That's always the caveat to it.
Well, how are they going to get through Braum, Sejuani, and Orianna? I mean, yes, Gnar maybe with a flank.
He's got that once or twice, but Kobbe has reacted in time. If Ignar maybe with the ultimate from Kalista throws him in, but Kobbe, look, his summoners are available. He's easily able to reposition in fights and just got the Blade of the Rune King active as well. Kobbe has actually played team fights this series very well on the Tristana, on the Kog'Maw so far.
And this is the point in the game where you start thinking, okay, right, who is player of the series? How do you award it? And, you know, Trashy's had a very good game on all 3 games, in my opinion, in his jungle picks.
Yeah.
But I think Kobbe is probably the man that's got my leading votes. He's great game in Tristana. Nothing to do with the fact the stats team just
I was going to say, did the stats team just ask you? I was like, hey, this is a great talking
thought about
point.
it. But no, but I do, you know, you get to game 2, you get to game 3, and you start thinking, right, who deserves player of the series, and how do you submit a vote?
I think it is difficult. I think Kobbe, when you look at who has closed games and been the person responsible for that, but as you said, when you've got Frontline playing for you, how responsible are they for defending a fragile carry?
You go to game 2, if Trashy hadn't locked up PowerOfEvil's Vlad with the prison, maybe Kobbe dies, right? So does Trashy deserve it or not? Those are the questions that I am wrought with frustration with right now. The Glacial Fissure comes down from Mikyx, and very easy fight here for Splyce. Very good Gnar from Alphari. It gets the wallop and the crunch. Shockwave pulls back too. Splyce not done yet. Everybody gets a kill. Wunder's able to walk out of everything. No damage lands. Sencux flashes over the wall. It's a clean ace for Splyce.
No damage exists from the Misfits to clean up a fight, and Splyce all members strong. 5-0. Towers are going to go down. They have good damage to take this Baron, and what has been an incredibly close series up until game 3 is now everything in Splyce's court. They're going to be able to take this down very quickly, and look to end the game within the next 3 minutes.
I mean, there's no ways they can throw this game. Touch wood. Let's see whether or not. I mean, 10k gold. That was just an exquisite team fight. And Ignar and Misfits are just too far behind. They're too disjointed.
So, Splyce going in on the team fight after Misfits closed the distance. Here you can see my vote for player of the series. Safely at the back there, Kobbe being able to output all of this damage down. It's a team effort from Splyce, though. As much as we're singing the praises of Kobbe, Wunder has had a fantastic game. He is 8-0-6 on this Camille. He has been such an instrumental part. Like Sencux 6-0-11. It actually is more difficult than just Trashy or Kobbe.
So
now that I'm looking at this, I'm like, wow, I actually...
The thing is, it has to be player of the series,
yes,
right? Not
exactly.
player of the game. So, Kobbe and Mikyx now.
This is a good engage.
Misfits may be able to get some kills here. Kobbe is silenced, no flash available, gets caught by the Wunder as well. Here comes Wunder. Whether or not you are voting for Kobbe, let's see whether or not he's the main carry. Alphari gets chunked down. Sencux gets himself yet another. This is just an easy stomp for Splyce. Shockwave to finish it in style.
Wow.
As Wunder gets yet another. Initially, I had thought of Kobbe, but I actually changed my vote to Trashy. 3, 1, and 19. 22 of the team's 24 kills. I think he's had early game impact.
Yeah.
I think he's had team fight impact. Like, this is just a beautiful ending to what was the deciding game.
And I think Wunder and Sencux will be upset at that as well, because this game for them, but look, they just want to fight without their late game AD carry because of how strong the Camille, the Orianna, the crowd control that Splyce were bringing. And this seems to be a little bit more of this magical formula for them. They were trying to play long range comps a little earlier with the Sejuani, the Syndra, a little bit different of a focus. But look, Misfits, they're the ones that start this engage. Misfits couldn't get more than Kobbe before Wunder arrives, deletes Hansama so hard that I can't even get my words out, and Splyce just move through the rest of the team fight with ease. There is nothing stopping them here, despite the number of tanks that Misfits drafted. Just the damage is way too much.
It really is, and so much credit to Splyce. After that game 1, where they legitimately threw the game, Splyce put themselves into a scenario where they got team fought on and then lost. And for Splyce to bounce back, win the backdoor in game 2, and now crush Misfits in game 3. Weaver's Wall, actually, there's fantastic from PowerOfEvil. PowerOfEvil takes the satchel to safety, leaves Hansama for dead. Splyce get themselves 3 more kills. 27 kills in 29 minutes.
This is ugly now.
I mean, like, there is actually Misfits family members in the audience here watching this game, Splyce. End it, end it.
This is already done. It's that scene from Simpsons with the Hamburglar. He's already dead at this point. Splyce pushing in for a very convincing game 3 win.
Well, Splyce is absolutely destroying Misfits, taking down both of the Nexus turrets, and in one of the most dominant game 3s, Splyce take down Misfits to close out the cross-group play. And crucially, Splyce are now tied with H2K, UOL, and G2 at 6 series wins and 3 losses.
Of course, H2K and UOL in the same group as them makes Group B very interesting, and considering results like Unicorns losing to Roccat, Splyce may have just started a streak to jump above the Unicorns of life. Splyce are on a good spree of games like this. Maybe the Group B standings aren't settled anytime soon.
Especially with Vitality on the run. Sorry, correction. Top of the table, yes, in Group B. And on the other side, with Roccat now being 1 series away from Misfits and taking down UOL, like you just mentioned, Roccat are now touching distance of a playoff spot of Misfits. Today's a strange series.
It has been.
The way the game's played out, the decision-making, and I'm going to do a quick personal rant for a moment. Every time Splyce go on stage, I actually walk up to their manager and ask their manager to get Wunder and Kobbe to get all the kills for me. I have both of them in my fantasy team. Unfortunately, my fantasy league does not count game 3. It only counts It only counts games 1 and 2.
Wunder was 11-0 and 11. Oh, that's the most disappointing thing. I'm actually just mad because they keep trolling us. in Champion Select. They keep like hovering Kane, and Mickey just laughs at us
I
when
know.
we get excited.
It is good, but like, you saw the players on stage, they're just walking back to the pods and pedestals, and Splyce backdoor in game 2, absolute crush in game 3. And I can see the Misfits players, you know, having a bit of a huddle now. The mindset and what this game does to you, knowing the impact on the standings, knowing the implications for playoffs, it is huge. And
it was somewhat of a risky draft coming out from Misfits, putting all of their eggs in the early game basket up against an Orianna Kog'Maw. Remember, those are the 2 picks drafted in this game, so I can understand why Misfits go, okay, they've got late game scaling, we can actually beat them early and then transition that into a win, but unfortunately, too many team fights, too many skirmishes that didn't go in their favor, ill-advised skirmishes, means Misfits don't come out the victors on the series.
They do not, and of course, the voting panel is in for the player of the series. It ended up going to Trashy, the man that had all the engages on that Sejuani, the early game impact. This is our dramatic Zoom package for player of the series this week. Also, Trashy is headed up to the Analyst desk now, where he will join Drakos and the boys for a post-game lobby, talk a little bit about the series, talk about our expectations, and of course, how now the last week of cross-group play played out. Because, Stress, if I look at my numbers, Group A got 31 wins, game-wise. Group B got 31 wins, but Group B is the victor because they won 13 of the 25 series.
Wow. Incredible, incredible.
Maths is hard sometimes.
Tiebreaker on series there. We should go another level, see who 2-0'd very often. But I like the parity in groups because there's always the discussion which group is stronger.
The parity in groups. Of the 12 Group A wins, 5 of them were Fnatic. And the other 4 teams were only able to combine 7 series wins together. Math is so hard.
It's so difficult.
It's a 4-day week. It's Sunday. I'm not here.
It's always up and down because there's arguments for both things, right? It's like Rocket beat the Unicorns, but then Fnatic smashed the entire opposite group. So then you have that argument. It's always fun with a group structure like this when people start comparing because you won't know until playoffs when you see if it's 3 Group A teams, 3 Group B teams, or whether everything is an even spread before you really see who is the top group. What I'm excited about as well is this is the discussion that we'll carry on as well with Trashy. I'm looking forward to hearing a player's perspective in terms of like the parity within the groups. Of course, we've mentioned this a lot this series, how now HTK, UOL, G2, and Splyce are all tied for series. And we need to see who's going to advance to playoffs. But we end cross-group play. It's week 7. It's now ended. 7-14 rewrote the meta quite a lot. And that ironically ended up hurting Unicorns, where I thought it would favor them. Because it kind of put them on an even keel, right? And the weird thing was, they went to a meta that everybody else had just left, and everybody else went to the meta the Unicorns were just playing with, fight all the time in mid lane, so that's why you thought it would favor them. Very, very weird turn of events this week. Very weird indeed, and while they're getting set up on the Analyst desk, it is time to take a look at some of the highlights from our last 4 days of games here in Berlin. So here are your big plays of the week, of course, brought to you by Acer. Now the first one we want to look at is, after being ranked as the 7th best mid laner in Europe by Caps, Exile had something to prove against Fnatic's mid laner. Let's take a look. Will the Unicorns of Love give up first blood? Yes, they will! A second for Reckless! Death Sentence to the back end won't find a target. Caps is now running for his life. Exile's looking to trade with the rake, the flash, the dash, the smash! Exile gets it!
The Exile is able to get his solo kill outplay onto Caps.
Solo laners cannot afford to go mid to late. Exile and Caps trading very heavily. I don't know if Caps fully was aware of that.
He can win this, he can win this.
Cleanse comes out, Twin Fangs available, Exile and Caps, trading.
I knew it! He was out of mana, he was out of mana! And Exile was just waiting for the Q reset.
So excited watching that because going into the game, one of our big narratives was about how Exile had been struggling and how he needed to find his form. And then he literally makes all of us shut up on the caster desk with like individual 1v1 outplays. It was great to see. Brings out the talent. This is why tier lists are bad, is if you're on that stage and you're playing and you go, this guy is trash. It is. See, lucky number 7. That's how we made it work. Anyways, the Terror of the Void also took a bite out of EU LCS this week. Splyce's Wunder found himself in a nice meal, or he found a nice meal. He caught the head of his position out against the Ninjas in Pajamas.
Splyce are looking to scale into the late game with a Baron. They will disengage from it for the time being. Profit pushed off towards the side by Sencux. Here comes the engagement. Wunder, EQ! Goodbye, my son! Nothing you can do against Wunder when he wants to nom you down.
The head just got ripped right off HQ there. That was impressive. You managed to read a Q as a D. Can you read upside down?
Apparently that's what I did. Apparently that's what I did.
I was like, wow, that's impressive.
The teleprompter said HQ. I read head. I don't know. Anyways, look, earlier today we saw a thrilling finish in game number 2 between Misfits Gaming and Splyce. Misfits tried their best to stop the backdoor, but the clock was ticking very, very fast.
Misfits are going to try and end it. Tristana and Syndra could kill Alphari quite easy. They're going to try and race this down.
Kobbe and Sencux take down the Nexus turret. Alphari's left to defend, but he's got no cataclysm.
Can they get there?
The target. Buster shot comes out. Kobbe's caught up. Sencux gets the stun.
They got to get Sencux.
Needs a few extra ones.
They got it.
Down and going to game 3.
Hit it. Oh, Sencux! One more.
Yes! Just a glimpse of the craziness that happened here on our special Sunday.
It was so fun. Like, game 1 ended like that. Game 2 had, like, really everything. And I'm very impressed with Splyce in game 3. Their performance, their mid-game, it was beautiful. I want to see how they handle their own group next week. Anyway, that does it from us here at the Cast. Let's hand it over to Drakos and the boys for the post-game lobby.
Welcome to the post-game lobby for a look back at the Summoners Cross, or this summer's, not the Summoners, Cross Group play, and what is coming up in the future. Joining me are Andrew Vedius Day and, of course, Splyce's jungler Trashy, player of the series, Trashy.
Well deserved.
Thanks,
well
man. What so for you, looking back on the series briefly, what do you think was the breaking point for Splyce? How were you able to find that win?
I felt like the 2 first games were just team fights, and we played really well in the first game until we kind of got aced and they got Baron. So we realized that during the series that the way they had too many tools to just force fights, and we need to kind of play a perfect game in order to not get caught out. Like we obviously, I feel like we lost the first game rather than them winning it. But we tried to remove some of the tools they had to force the fights, and then I think we played better as a team than them today. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, look good for you guys overall. Well, the last few weeks here in Europe have been all about cross-group play. So as it comes to a close, let's see how things have changed. We take a look at the standings back in week 3. We can see things very different than maybe we expected now. Of course, this is when G2 and Roccat were tied up. I think probably the most surprising thing. And Splyce, I would still say that the top of Group B still looked very similar and has remained very similar. And then as we start to look at week 7, things changed very quickly. What is the thing that stands out most to you guys when we look back at week 3 compared to now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the fact that Group B has stayed the same. I was expecting a little more variance. Like, I was expecting Unicorns, or I was actually expecting H2K to be a lot more dominant than they have been, but I feel like we're still seeing a lot of the same mistakes. And I'm also quite surprised by how much Unicorns have underperformed in the last few weeks. I definitely feel like after Rift Rivals, teams are finding avenues to punish them a little bit more, and Splyce is definitely on the up and up, but I still have a few questions for Trashy regarding that.
Hit me, man.
Well, let's look at Splyce then. Let's bring up what Splyce looks like across multiple groups, and let's talk a little bit about the team. What do you feel like has been the progression, Trashy, for Splyce between regular play, cross-group play, or just over the split total?
I actually think we started out the split pretty well. But at around the time just before Rift Rivals and after Rift Rivals, we were kind of slumping, and the mood was in the house and in the team in general was not that great, and it kind of showed in our play. I think both the series against G2 and Fnatic, where we got outclassed pretty hard in my opinion. We were not playing to the level we can play at. So I mean, pretty much the only thing I can say about us is that we are on the rise, and thanks to Boris, we will get there.
All right, Pirate didn't ask. Whatever else we were planning, cut it. Who is Boris? Who is Boris? Hans wouldn't tell me.
I mean, it's not a he or she who, like, it's just Boris.
What does Boris?
What is Boris? What does Boris mean? Can you explain Boris to me? Whatever or whoever?
I can't say more than it's just Boris. So you guys will see at the end of the split when we are gonna perform well.
Okay, let us know with your guesses. Hashtag who is Boris at LO Esports, I guess.
Is it an anagram? Is it a metaphor? It could be so many things.
Big, over-aggressive, really intense
Snake.
Snake.
Splyce.
That's our guess. I don't know.
But
anyway,
I want to bring the conversation back to Splyce.
Fair.
You said you're definitely on the up and up. But something that I feel I've noticed a lot from Splyce is, to me, you guys are pretty slow in the early game, and you are not super proactive, personally. I think that you guys are really good at punishing mistakes, and you're a really smart team, and you recognize when people are making mistakes so you can capitalize on that. But I don't think that you're the team that sets up and make the plays and suddenly makes that dramatic turnaround thing that suddenly wins you the game. Do you agree or disagree?
I would agree with it to some extent, but I also feel like today actually we showed some of the progression we have done in the past week, where we actually executed a top dive at like 4 minutes, 5 minutes that pretty much set Wunder up to carry the game. So it's definitely something we're working on, and it requires us to have better communication, and it's something that we have looked at in the past and tried to fix. And right now, I'm really happy with some of the things we did today. Obviously, we're not playing as fast as some of the other teams in the league, but we're trying to play with discipline, and we're trying to make the right decisions in the game. And I think today we obviously still saw some of the flaws in our slow play, but I also think we did some good things in the early game.
definitely have been seeing improvement. Another team that's been improving very rapidly is G2. When we look at them coming into cross group play, tied up with Rawcat, and now significant improvement post-Rift Rivals. You've played up against them. I'm sure you guys get to scrim them as well. What is your impression of G2? Do they feel like a different team compared to how they were playing back at the start of the split?
I think definitely they're getting better, and it also shows. But I think the meta right now is also fitting them well, with setting up plays as a team, not as much of like solo plays all over the place with assassins or heavy carries top or something like this. So meta fits them well, and it seems like they fixed their drafting issues, and it's kind of easy to draft in this meta, in my opinion, because we pretty much know what is going to happen in the draft. So you just look most games are actually just decided who has the better team fight. And in some ways, it's kind of sad in a way, because you can be so... I think the game we played today, the first game, we actually played really well in the early game and macro-wise, until we did one mistake, and then we got aced, and then it's just lost. And it's kind of sad in a way, because you don't get rewarded for what the macro decisions you do in previously. If you just lose, it's kind of like the UL style, like you run it down and do one team fight, and then suddenly you're winning the game. So in some ways, it's a cool meta with a lot of fighting, but it's also not as rewarding in the early game.
Yeah, and it's something it seems like you mentioned has helped G2 to a certain degree. I want to turn our attention to Unicorns of Love, though, on the other side. They have a little bit of a different approach to the meta from what we've seen so far. Now, the town coming out, a little more emphasis on its lethality carries. Things have not looked, despite the record still looking pretty good for Unicorns of Love, I feel like we are starting to see a bit of a downturn for this team.
And this surprises me, because their strength for the longest time has been what this meta is. And if anything, you would expect them to thrive in this meta. We've seen yesterday in a lot of the team fights versus Fnatic that they are still really good at actually team fighting, and they can just draft comps around trying to do that, but we're actually seeing them make a shift away from that. We're seeing them adapt. We're seeing them trying new things, and I don't know if this is a point in the meta in which you need to be experimenting. Like, Trashy, you can probably speak more to this. Like, when you're deciding when you want to introduce new stars into your play, whether you want to try new champions, when do you think is the best time to do it? And is it at all, when is it appropriate?
Well, it depends what team it is. Like, I bet UL would just be like, yeah, let's play this champ, and then next game they're playing it. So it depends on the teams, and I think a lot of the champions, they have chosen like the Talon and stuff like this. I personally, I'm not a big fan, because the tanks kind of shut it down. Like, you hit one CC on a Talon, and then it's kind of like, what is the Talon gonna do? So I think they just need to figure out what they want to do. And the biggest problem when I look at UL is their mid lane champion pool, and I think they need to change it a bit if they want to get to the top of Group B. But
also, I look at Xerxes as well, because he's been pretty vocal about how he feels it's difficult for him to have that early level of impact that he says he wants to have, but can't, because of he has struggling solo laners. Trashy has had a tendency to randomly die in the 1v1, and in the middle lane, Exile is now renowned for that trait. And even though yesterday both Trashy and Exile were performing extremely well, he still didn't have that same level of early success that he talks so much about. So I'm following closely closely as to whether or not he can improve upon that, or whether or not they will just revert back to a style which we've seen so many teams have success with, which is just fight, fight, fight.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic because when Xerxes just came into the league, he was pretty much playing only for himself in a way. Like he was playing super selfish with his pathing, didn't really help lanes to get a push out or get ambition and stuff like this. And he was actually performing super well in these situations where he would just at some point take over games with huge farm leads and level leads. But now, since they've changed a bit and tried to help lanes more, he also seems like he's not performing as well. So it's that like rookie stages that like, for a player like me who has played for a couple of years, I've been through all those phases where you learn. Sometimes you learn to be more selfish, and sometimes you learn that you need to help your teammates more in specific situations. And it's so situational that it's kind of you need to learn by doing in a way. So I'm excited to see where they take it. I think right now they're not looking as good as us and H2K. So it's kind of funny because none of us wanna get that third place spot to meet G2 in potential quarterfinals, which it looks like right now. So there's gonna be a lot of fight in Group B in the last week.
Definitely is the case. Well, we'll see what changes and what the next weeks will bring as we head back into intra-group play. Based on what the teams have shown so far, we have a pretty explosive few weeks ahead of us, and I mean, I honestly just don't know what to see here. This is going to be such an exciting thing to watch. All right, well, now we can talk about my favorite thing in the entire world. This is my take on patch 7.14. I've been prepping this all day. I did hard research. I watched every game back. And I have hard. This took me at least 5 minutes to think of. Can you
say it again?
This is my take on patch 7.14.
I want you to look referring to the word.
Research. Anyway, I have 3 easy steps for you, gentlemen. 1, draft more engaged than your opponent. 2, engage before your opponent. And 3, murder your opponent. Trashy, as someone who's played on 7.14, how accurate is my interpretation of patch 7.14? What is there something I'm missing here? Is it more complicated than this?
I feel like it's pretty spot on, honestly. I can definitely see the research and the 3 easy steps.
And so I'm curious, like, I made this half jokingly, but really when we look at these games, I feel like a lot of these games, as you mentioned, have been decided in the draft. Who has the better team fighting composition? I mean, it's a little bit comedic, but I also feel like there's a certain degree of truth. But I mean, is it as simple as drafting more engaged than your opponent and just forcing fights?
To some extent, I would agree with it. But on the other hand, I also feel like, for example, us today, when the enemy team had more engaged tools than us, we were we would get caught for no reason. Where if you don't play with discipline and actually play on the waves and look out for them when they're looking to group and catch you, then obviously it's going to look bad, and then the team with the engaged tools are going to look better. So I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, you just follow these steps and then you win the game. But to some extent, it looks like that is kind of the way to play the game right now.
One of the things that I'm a little disappointed about from Trashy is, you draft more engaged than your opponent. And today, he admitted that game 1, it was a little rough. They adapted it later on to the series. And when I look at this engage before your opponent, there were a couple of champions that we were talking about earlier before the show, Trashy, because Trashy, he came to me and he said, look, Vedius, I trust your analytical insight.
I was here, for the record. This is true. It's a true story.
I'd really love to know what you think is really strong in the jungle. And I was like, have you looked at North America? Because those junglers, they're really good, right?
They're so good. They proved that they're superior.
So I was like, maybe you should try Kayn out. Like, get Kayn in the jungle, go top lane, get a Maokai. That great setup, right? You have a tank top, you have an aggressive jungle. Or over in Korea, they've got a Skarner. If you want engage, you want tools to fight, he's right there, man. Great clear speed. He's got everything you could want. And I was talking to him. I said this, right? I was like, Kayn Skarner.
Come on, where's this
I think that's what you could go with. And you went 3 games of Sejuani, Trashy.
But that's engaged too, no?
I mean, it is, but you could miss. And you did miss a few.
I did miss.
It's really hard to flash away from that Skarner dagger thing.
The biggest problem we run into is if I'm supposed to play Kayn, then my top laner is supposed to play Maokai.
He is.
And
yeah,
that's kind of
I think historically, when we look at Splyce, I think team has definitely looked a lot better when you're playing the tank and Wunder's playing the carry.
I mean,
why is that? Why is that? Is that just Wunder better mechanically?
Usually I'm just taking the bitch role, so that's
yeah, playing the back seat there. Maybe don't get to be the, but you get to force the engages. Isn't that your thing?
You won player of the series.
I mean, yeah, to some extent, I actually really like playing tank, so I don't mind it. And Wunder likes to do damage, so he's damage champs.
Notice, yes.
And then suddenly it just makes sense. So yeah,
definitely clicks in. Are you at all worried about this meta for him? You guys did find success to a certain degree with the Camille on the top lane today. Are you worried that if he is still playing all these split pushers and every other team is finding success with tanks, that it's not going to work out for you guys?
Not at all, actually. I think right now we are implementing some stuff in our play where it actually doesn't matter if Wunder is playing a carry or a tank, because we can set him up for success, or we can set other people up for success and win the game of this. So I'm actually really excited for how we are gonna progress in the next couple of weeks.
I'm excited to see it too now. It feels like you guys were the first team to really find success on something that wasn't, and I could be wrong, of course, there's a lot of games this week, but that wasn't just jam the game full of tanks, right? You had a Camille on the top side. You had a Kog'Maw, which is not a pick that we saw a lot, and definitely not a pick that we saw be successful. How did you guys find success in Misfits in that third game to shut down like a lot of these more engage heavy picks like the Kalista, like the fly that is actively hitting him in the face?
We took kind of a gamble in the draft by giving up Cho'Gath, which I wouldn't recommend against any team. But I felt like Kog'Maw is an answer to Kog'Maw, because you're stacking so much HP on the Kog'Maw, so like Kog'Maw can just shred the HP, so it makes sense in that way. And we had a plan and we followed the plan, and that's what matters.
But I also want to emphasize how good they actually were able to collapse on a lot of those fights, because many people may not remember how close the Game 1 series between G2 and Splyce was. They weren't properly able to play the 1-3-1 because you guys had that Jax then, and every time that Jax was being dragged into all those team fights. And when you have a Jax in team fight, it's not quite as optimal. But this time when you have a Camille, you actually have a few more options. And the pathing that Wunder often took was always getting on top of Handsummer. His impact in those fights was so minimal, and it just came from a lot of good, I felt, coordination and just communication when setting up those fights.
But correct me if I'm wrong here, a lot of that also, Wunder was hilariously far ahead in a lot of the mid to late game team fights. So I'm wondering how much of this ability to execute a comp comes from building an early game lead for your side lanes and setting a pick like Camille up to just dominate.
I mean, obviously, when in this kind of draft, we were kind of just saying to our bot lane, try to survive, you know. We're playing on the other side of the map, just stay in the game. And we executed a play top, and even though they were making the first play top, Wunder survived it, and that was all we needed in order for us to regain the pressure in the game. And then obviously, if you play a champ like Camille, you don't really want to fall behind on Camille, because then the other team can kind of roll over you in team fights. So it's pretty much just playing to your condition of winning, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, and today it worked.
Yeah, definitely looks like it worked out for you. Well, let's look forward next week. The teams get back in their groups, starting with Mysterious Monkeys versus Vitality. And as we look at the schedule, what matches are you most excited for, Trashy, as a player? Are you at all, how do you feel about this H2K matchup as the first match back in regular group play?
I think it's gonna be exciting, close. Out of the teams of Group B, I think we and H2K are looking the strongest right now. So I want to see how we mesh up against them. Usually we have a tendency of losing to them, so I kind of want to change that and see if we can beat them. The group is so close that actually the team that can get the first place and go straight to semis are looking really good in going to potential worlds. So it's the last couple of weeks here are going to be very intense for Group B, and I just hope we can get on top of the group.
I think that Friday will be a very big day for a lot of teams, because bear in mind that Misfits are actually now closer to Roccat than they think because of the Splyce win today, which means that given Rockat's schedule, they could start getting themselves wins and start challenging Misfits for that third place, very similar to last split. But also, Splyce versus H2K, you're looking at who could actually make away from that third place spot, and you're really looking fairly safe in the second and first.
Yeah, and it's a very close battle. You guys all have the same score. Of course, match differential plays into it interestingly, but if you can just get a series win over the opposition, you can not lock first at this point, but hold it for now.
That's kind of our problem. Like we have not as many pluses on the winning side, so we need to be able to beat these teams.
Yeah, definitely feels like a rough situation if it does come down to those tiebreakers. I'm curious, when we look back at the schedule, playing against H2K, as you said, you guys are improving week to week and things are getting better. Would you have rather faced H2K closer to the end of the split, or do you feel like now is a good time? They did kind of just come off of a hard loss versus G2.
Honestly, I don't mind. Right now, we are playing at a level where we can beat them, so I don't mind.
I like the confidence. It's going to mean an exciting Saturday next week.
All right, Trashy, it's going to be 2-0 or 2-1. How confident are you?
Ooh, I hope 2-1, then it's going to be exciting.
All right, are you going to take the same? Are you going to give him Cho'Gath? That's the other question. You gave.
Well, I mean, if you play Cho'Gath like Maxlore, then sure you can give it.
All right, on that note, that was all from us here in Berlin. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We're going to be back on Thursday for week 8 of the summer split. Thanks again for joining us, and have a wonderful Sunday evening.
Sorry, back as well.
It is the last game of cross-group play here in the European LCS. Misfits Gaming taking on Splyce.
Like, yeah, the Fisher is always talking about this farm, tank meta, 5-man mid, you know. He just wants to be a part of it.
Was Mickey saying this is literally the worst Gragas ever?
And here comes Trashy, gonna jump over the wall. The flail goes out. Baby cage put down, as does the Cataclysm, and first blood secured by Splyce.
Yeah, nice. I'm gonna boost.
Runaways. Exactly what Splyce do not want. The power of evil shockwave catches 3.
I got it.
And Misfits right back in it. That's a triple for power.
Come on. Camille. Nice!
And Misfits crush Splyce in game 1.
Yeah, we're gonna win mid game for sure. Like, Baron, 20 minutes.
Yeah, really good engage.
Hashtag hype.
He's going to get threatened.
There's a tower dive available. Rocket jump not going to be enough. Kobbe is available for first blood.
Ooh.
Hans Sommer.
It's no flash.
Look, Tristana.
No, it's Syndra. Nice.
This could be the fight for Misfits. Hans Sommer's looking for the cleanup. Trashy goes down. Wunder's the next target. Misfits will ace Splyce.
Oh, Sencux!
One more.
Can they get
To the
there?
target. Buster shot comes out. Kobbe's caught up. Sencux gets the stun.
They're going to get Sencux.
Needs a few afterwards.
They got it.
Down and going to game 3.
Kalista no flash. Yeah, kill Kalista. Kill prop. I stun.
Nice.
One more. Taliyah no flash. Okay.
There's someone out here. Good job, guys.
Nice.
Everybody gets a kill. Wunder's able to walk out of everything. No damage lands. Sencux flashes over the wall. It's a clean ace. In one of the most dominant game 3s, Splyce take down Misfits to close out the cross-group lane.